Thank you for watching my page, coming to it. Really appreciate it. If you would press like and hit the little bell so that when we post a video you will get it. And could you please subscribe? The more people that subscribe, the more people that view, the more they push the video out, and we can reach other people for Christ. Today we're going to be talking about how did the apostles and the men of God live back in Jesus' day, and how people live today. In 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 9 through 14, it says they were both hungry and thirsty and poorly clothed and roughly treated and are homeless. They also said, we toil working with our hands, and that they were reviled and persecuted. Doesn't sound like they lived a great life to me. They lived a pretty hard life. The men that followed Jesus had to face a lot of conflict, had to face a lot of pain, had to face a lot of adversities, and they were not always treated well. But we live in a society where people, a lot of people thinks that preachers, especially preachers, think they deserve to live in a $5 million home, have 3 boats and 6 planes and 250 acres of land and this and that and all this. Jesus didn't live that way. I've heard TV and preachers say, some of them, not all of them, I've heard some of them say, well, I think if Jesus was living this day, he'd be driving a Rolls Royce. I don't. Because in Jesus' day, when they were writing the verses for the Bible and when they were being written down and they were living the life, Jesus did not have a mansion. Jesus never rode around in a gold-plated carriage or a chariot with 2 big horses or 4 big horses pulling it. When he went to the shore side to get to the other side of the sea so he could go over and preach the gospel, he didn't have a private ship. He hitched a ride with whoever was there, went down into the bottom of it and laid in the corner on a pallet and laid there when he traveled. Jesus didn't travel with the best accommodations. He never was born into wealth, and he didn't live like he was a wealthy man. So that's a false deception, and I think it's terrible. It's hurt a lot of people, and it still today is hurting a lot of people. And Acts chapter 3, if you read verse 1 through 10, it talks about the lame man. And what did Peter say when the man asked him for money? I do not possess silver or gold, but what I do have I give you, and in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, walk. He says, silver and gold I have none. He didn't have silver and gold. If we're all supposed to be rich, and if all these ministers who are supposed to have all this wealth, well, why didn't the disciples have it? Why didn't the men that followed Jesus have it? Why didn't they have silver and gold they could have gave the poor and handed it to them? They gave them something more important. They gave them healing. They gave them a life. They gave them the Lord, because silver and gold they did not have. They were not wealthy men, and they never had great riches. Now, my father was born in 1895. My grandfather, not my great-grandfather, just my grandfather, was born in 1862 during the Civil War. All right, so I got a lot of knowledge passed on from my grandfather to my father to me. And my father started preaching in the late 20s, early 30s. And he went into communities that didn't have a full gospel church. He'd pitch a tent and sing. He'd play on the street corner, the guitar, and sing and preach, and people throw money in his case. And then he'd talk to the businessman. Bottom line, he would build a church, train a pastor, and move on to another town. He did that 7 times in Missouri, Illinois, and Kentucky, and built churches. And my dad was a firm believer, and I am too, that God doesn't want us to be super wealthy and have a lot of money. If you do, that's fine. If God's blessed you, if you were a smart business person and ran your business good and it expanded and got big and maybe got bought out by somebody else, made a lot of money, I'm happy for you. There's nothing wrong with that. But the pastors, ministers should not live 10, 20 times better than the people they're pastoring. If the average person in your congregation lives in a $150,000 to $200,000 house, then you should be living in a $150,000 to $200,000 house. You shouldn't have a $5 million mansion. You don't need it. You don't have to have a Bentley or a Rolls Royce to drive. How about just buying a domestic car like most of the people in your congregation drive? Anyway, I'm going to hammer that, but I'm just telling you, we need to realize that Jesus wants us to have our needs supplied, but that doesn't mean we're going to get all of our wants. And so Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 25 through 30, I'm going to read you something Paul wrote. And I hope you would agree with me that Paul was a good man of God, that he was a big man of God. He wrote 13 books of the New Testament, which is almost half. There's 27 books. And he wrote 13 of them. A lot of people haven't even read 13 books of the New Testament. They take everything they get verbatim or what they learn off of TV from preachers, and you need to study the Word for yourself and find out what it really says. Sometimes some of those people twist the Scriptures into being something they want it to be instead of what it is. Let's see what Paul had to say. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned 3 times. I was shipwrecked 3 times. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger on my own countrymen, in danger from the Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, and in danger of false brothers. I have labored and toiled and have often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst. I have often gone without food. I have been cold. I've been naked. Besides everything else, I face daily the pressure of my concern for all the churches, overseeing them and worrying about them, who is weak, and I do not feel weak, who is led me into sin, and I do not inwardly burn. If I boast, I will boast of the things that shows my weakness. Doesn't sound like Paul lived a luxurious life. He didn't have a chariot and fancy horses. He didn't have a fancy mansion. He didn't have a personal butler to take care of him. He didn't live in a 10,000 square foot home with 22 chandeliers in it, and one of the chandeliers, the preacher said on TV, is worth more than the average person's house. I don't know if I was that rich from getting from poor people, from sick people, from widow women, if I want to brag about that, but that's what they brag about, and I'm going to get a $65 million jet. Well, you just bought a $35 million jet. At what point in time do you get enough money where you don't hammer people for money and you want more and more and more? They're living their good life now. I think one of them wrote a book about that. Live your best life now. Well, we're supposed to live our best life when we get to heaven, where the streets are paved with pure gold, the walls are jasper, the gates are pearl, and we're going to get a nice place to live. No bills, no sickness, all happy, don't have to worry about telemarketers calling you. It's going to be a wonderful time. That's when you're going to live your best life. If you're living your best life now, I don't know exactly where you're planning on going when you leave this life, but I think heaven's going to be better than earth. But you decide on that. And Paul penned 13 books of the Bible, yet he went through all these troubles and problems and struggle. Jesus did not own a ship, like I told you. If he was rich and God wanted him to be super rich, he would have had a private ship. Could have took him across the sea. He could have hopped on any time he wanted. And he could have said, well, I want a bigger ship, and I need a bigger chariot, and let's get 4 horses instead of 2. You don't find Jesus doing that. You don't find him fleecing people. And you don't have to send $1,000 to a preacher. I saw one preacher, he said, you need to get rid of your charge card debt. If you want God to get you out of debt, then you need to send $1,000. Sow the seed of $1,000 into my ministry, and then God will multiply it back to you and wipe out your debt. Then in the next breath, he says, now you can call this number, put it on your charge card. If you don't have the money to pay it, just put it on your charge card, and by faith, God will give it back to you. And I'm like, holy moly, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And years and years ago, when I was on the radio in St. Louis, there was a preacher who was on there all the time, and he had a 30-minute show, and he'd take 20 minutes begging for money, sometimes 25. Then he'd give a couple quick scriptures, then give his address 4 or 5 times, his phone number, so he could send him money. He told the people one day, if you send $50 or more, I'll send you a red string that I prayed over. You put this red string in your wallet, and you'll never be broke. God will always have money in your wallet. You got to step out by faith and sow the seed, and I'll send you this red string. Well, I got to run into him over at the station one day. I didn't know he knew me. He said, well, hello, Reverend May, how you doing? I said, I'm doing good. How are you? He goes, oh, couldn't be better, couldn't be better. And I was like, wow, that's good. I said, he said to me, you been pretty busy preaching and playing and singing? I said, yeah, I've been pretty busy. I said, let me ask you something. I said, I heard your program on the way over here. Sounds like you're really in a financial bind. And he said, well, yeah, money's been pretty slim, and I want to be able to pay my radio bill and all that. I said, well, can I give you a piece of advice that might help you? He said, sure. I said, why don't you put one of those red strings in your wallet? You'll never be broke. And then you won't have to ask people for money no more, and you'll always have money in your wallet. He looked at me, and all of a sudden his countenance looked like he wanted to rip my head off. I mean, he got really mean looking real quick. And I said, well, is there something wrong, brother? You said if everybody would put the red string in their wallet, they'd never be broke and never have to worry about money. If it works, why don't you do it? You're the one, you prayed over the red string, stick one in your wallet. He walked off, turned back. As he opened the door of the radio station, looked back at me, and if looks could kill, I'd have been dead. I'm telling you, folks, I've seen them all come and go in my entire life. I've been to tent meetings, theaters, revivals, you name it. And I'm telling you that you don't have to give your last plug nickel to get God to do things for you and help you. That we need to realize that Jesus wasn't rich with this world's money, and he didn't want you to be, and he wasn't, and his disciples were not, and his followers, and Brother Paul wasn't rich. Look at all the things Paul went through. Beaten, shipwrecked, had a snake bite him. He had to shake the snake off. He had all sorts of problems and everything else, and he was serving God, wrote half the New Testament, had problems. And we're supposed to think, well, we'll never have a problem. Well, no, we're going to have problems. In life, you're going to have problems. Judas betrayed Jesus, and he hung himself. Paul was beheaded. Peter was crucified upside down. More and more, these guys went through all sorts of torment, and a lot of them died horrible deaths. Why? Because they served Jesus and they stood by him and would not deny him. In this day and age, everybody wants a large home. They want the best car. They want the best of everything. But that's not what God said. In his word, if you look at Philippians 4:19, it says, but my God shall supply all your need. It doesn't say you supply your wants, but God shall supply all your need according to his riches and glory by Christ Jesus. The Lord guaranteed us he would supply our need, not our wants. Your wants are a whole lot different than your need. All right, we need clothes. We need food. We need a roof over our head. Most people, unless you live in a city that has excellent transportation like trams and the trains they take, I don't even know what you call them. They take the train and buses and all that. Unless you have that kind of transportation, you need a car so you can get back and forth to work, and you can get back and forth to the store. And especially if you're in a big metropolitan area at night, you sure don't want to be walking down street after street. It's not safe. So God said he would supply all our need according to his riches and glory. Why didn't he put in there, I'll supply all your wants? Well, that's not what he put. He put your need. Big difference between your need and your wants. Now, you say, well, Brother May, I really would like to have a lot of things. Well, I understand. But some things are not good for you right now. Now, you may have a 13-year-old kid, a grandchild, or your own child come up to you and say, I wished I had a car. Then you have to tell little Billy Bob, hey, I can't get you a car. You're only 13. When you're 16, we'll talk about it. But you can't drive a car when you're 13. All right, you take your son out and you're teaching him how to shoot so he can go deer hunting when he's 10 years old. And he said, Dad, I like to go to the store and get a gun. I want to buy a nice rifle and this and that. Son, you can't do that. You're not old enough. You can't buy a rifle till you're 18 years old. You love your son. You want him to have a rifle, so you let him use one of yours under your supervision to go deer hunting with you, but he can't go out and buy a rifle, and he can't own a rifle because he's not of age. And you're 13, you can't go out and buy him a car to drive. They're not old enough to drive. You may be asking for something, the Lord may say, this is something I want to do for you, but you're not 16 yet. You're 13. We got to wait till you get down the road a little bit. Oh, you want something now? Well, you're 10 spiritually, but to get that, you're going to have to be 18 spiritually to get that. You may get some things that you want, but you may not get them when you want them. Why? Because you're not ready to have them. It's not time for you. And so we need to realize that money is not everything. It's just a means to provide you with a living, food, shelter, and this and that. I've never seen anybody. I've preached so many funerals. I don't know how many I've preached. There's a lot of them. I've never seen anybody load up a U-Haul trailer, drive it out to the cemetery, and bury everything with them. All their jewelry, their guns if they own them or whatever, all their lawn tractor and all their stuff they have in their baseball collection, all this. They don't take it to the cemetery with them. It's not going nowhere. You came into this world with nothing, you leave with nothing. You take nothing with you. So however many riches you pile up, when it comes time for the Lord to call you home, they're not going with you. And once you step on the other side, it don't matter if you're the President of the United States, it don't matter if you was the richest person on the earth, when you die, you're going to go on the other side and your wealth means zero. It means zilch. It don't mean anything. So why not do the important things? The important things is loving your family and loving your friends. These are the important things. When your grandchild climbs up on your lap and says, Papa or Mama, I love you. Man, that just melts your heart. When your own child speaks their first words and they take their first steps, you're so excited. And when they lose their first tooth, you take it and you keep it and all that. Why? Because these are the things that money can't buy. I will say one time I was in a meeting and the minister was up there and it was a men's thing. It was mostly men. And there's an old guy sitting next to me. This is before I got old, all right? He was sitting next to me. I was probably in my mid-30s. And the guy up there said the most important things in life money can't buy. And money can't buy you happiness. And the man next to me never missed a beat. He goes, well, he never paid for a divorce. And everybody around me looked back at him that was sitting in front of us. The people behind us leaned over and looked at him and all that. He said he never paid for a divorce. And then after a minute or two, he goes, money can buy you happiness if you pay for a divorce. And I thought, well, evidently this gentleman went through a divorce. But, money don't buy you happiness. The things that are most important in life for real are what money can't buy. There's a difference between needs and wants. We will never get all of our wants. Everything we want in life we'll not get, all right? Now, I can talk about me, I don't know about you. But I've been a Mopar man for almost 40 years. My best friend in life worked his entire career for Chrysler Corporation. I tried to get on with him, almost made it, but it didn't quite work out. And I've driven them for about 40 years, and I love them. And I've got a 84 Dodge Rampage, which is a little small pickup truck, kind of a mix between a car and a truck. And I've won a lot of first place trophies with that baby. I think I put it in 18 car shows. I won 16 first places with it. It's a nice little truck. I've always wanted a Roadrunner. My sister owned one. She let me drive it when I was young, when I was about 17, 18 years old. And I want a Roadrunner, but I've never had a Roadrunner. And now they're so expensive, I'll probably never have a Roadrunner. Why? It's a want. It's not a need. Every time I think about how could I come up with some money, how could I maybe sell some things, I can get me a Roadrunner, then something more important comes up, like my grandkids, they need school jackets. They're not cheap anymore. Some of the school jackets over $300 and plus. And so, I'd rather do that, and then I get to thinking about, I'd like to do this. And then all of a sudden, one of them, needs this or that. When my son was in high school, he needed a trumpet. And so I went out and bought him a trumpet. I could have went and bought a gun that I was liking and wanting, but my son was more important. So I bought a trumpet for my son. Why? Because I wanted him to be able to play in band, not be ashamed, have a good instrument, and so I bought him a trumpet. And so you do these things because you love your kids, you love your grandkids, you want them to have things, and so that's when you love someone, you take care of their needs instead of taking care of your own needs and your wants. My wants are not needs. Sure, once in a while we get a want, and we get it done, but I'll probably never own a Roadrunner because I'm not a person that worries about, I've never worried about being rich. I've never wanted to be rich. And so I just wanted to have a nice home, food to eat, clothes to wear, warm in the summer, cool in the summer, warm in the winter. And God's done that for me. And so I'm perfectly content with what I have. Paul said, be content in all things. Now, let me say it to you one more time. Paul said in the Word of God, be content in all things. So you have to be content with what you have. Sometimes the Lord can't give you better than what you have because you don't appreciate what you got. You're not content with what you got. You're not happy with what you got. You want more. And if you want more, you want more. And then you want something else. At somewhere along the line, you got to become content. I'm content. If I never get another, I bought this home. We had it built. We've lived in it 32 years. I'm never planning on moving out of it. I'm planning on being here till the Lord takes me home. I don't need a better home. I don't want to scale up and get a better home. I don't need anything better than what I have. What I have, I'm thankful for. So we need to realize that these men that lived in the Bible did not live lives of luxury. They didn't live lives. Now, the thrust of this, I want to tell you before I quit, is not I'm getting on TV preachers. I could care less what they do. If you want to send them all your money, you want to send envelopes and believe that you're going to get all your bills paid and everything else, and you're already $20,000 in debt on charge card. You put another $1,000 to give him because he told you it would wipe out your bills. I mean, does that make sense to you? Doesn't me. But anyway, I'm not worried about that. What I'm trying to tell you is, don't be dissatisfied with life. Enjoy what you have while you have it. And I heard a person one time told me, and I don't remember who it was. I'd love to give them credit for it. As somebody asked them, which is your favorite grandkid? Because she had 12 grandchildren. And she said, the one I'm with. If I'm with one and I'm out and we're buying an ice cream, that's my favorite grandchild. The next day, if I'm with one of the other ones, they're my favorite grandchild. And I've got 15 of them. So it's kind of that way with me. I love being with my grandkids. I love doing things with my grandkids. I love buying them things. Giving to other people means more to me than buying for myself. Seeing their face light up, seeing people that are in need and see their needs supplied. Man, I tell you what, that makes you feel so good that people are helped out and they're doing good. So just remember, folks, the apostles did not live rich lives. You don't have to have everything. You don't have to be super rich. You don't have to drive a Bentley or a Rolls Royce to be successful, to be somebody. You don't have to do that. That's fake things that people have made up that does not tie into the verses in the Bible. Jesus did not live a luxurious life. He didn't travel with the best accommodations. All right? His disciples did not travel with the best accommodations. They didn't stay in the finest inns. They didn't have lots of money, silver and gold. He even said in there, we don't have it. We don't have silver and gold. But they had something to give people, and it was Jesus Christ. Give Jesus Christ to your family. Give him to your children and your grandchildren. Share God with people. Let them know that you can be content and be happy without the almighty dollar being in front of you all the time. God wants you to be happy, and he will supply all your need according to his riches and glory. God bless you. I want you to know that I love you. I appreciate you. Please click like. Please join our channel. And thanks for your time. This time till next time. So long.